She had been feeling the weight of her life more than usual that morning. Rent was due in a few days, and her paycheck from the small bakery where she worked barely covered her bills. She had always been responsible, always careful, but somehow it never seemed to be enough. She sighed, glancing at the small calendar on her fridge, the pages filled with her careful notes and reminders. There was always something to remember, some payment, some responsibility. She loved her life in her own way, but the stress never seemed to let up. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from her friend, someone she had known for years. They shared jokes, small stories from their lives, and sometimes helped each other out when things got tough. She opened the message and read it carefully. "Hey, can you do me a favor? I have to attend to some family matters today and I need someone to cover my housekeeping shift. It's just for a few hours and I'll pay you extra. Please." She hesitated. The idea of taking on extra work was never appealing, especially when she was already tired from her regular job. But she knew her friend needed help, and there was a small part of her that couldn't say no when someone she cared about asked for a favor. She typed back quickly, "Sure, I can do it."
"What time should I be there?"
Her friend responded almost immediately, grateful and relieved. The details were simple: a large house on the edge of the city, strict instructions about cleaning, and a few household chores to complete. She read the message twice to make sure she understood everything. The house sounded huge, far bigger than any place she had ever cleaned before. She spent the rest of the morning preparing herself. She packed her cleaning supplies, changed into comfortable clothes, and took a deep breath. There was a strange mix of excitement and nervousness in her chest. She had no idea what the day would bring, only that it would be different from her usual routine. When she arrived, she could hardly believe her eyes. The house was enormous, with tall windows that gleamed in the sunlight, and a garden that stretched far beyond what she could see. She parked her car at the edge of the driveway, feeling a little intimidated. This was not the type of place she was used to, but she reminded herself to focus on the task at hand. She walked up to the front door and rang the bell. The door opened almost immediately, and a man stood there. He looked to be in his early 30s, tall and dressed in a simple shirt and trousers. There was an ease in his posture, a quiet confidence that didn't seem boastful. He smiled politely at her. "You must be here for the shift," he said. His voice was calm, warm, and friendly. She nodded, a little shy. "Yes, I am. I'm here to cover for my friend." "Great, please come in. The instructions are on the counter. If you need anything, just let me know." He stepped aside, allowing her to enter. The inside of the house was even more impressive than the outside. Everything was spotless, shiny, and organized. The smell of fresh flowers filled the air and soft music played in the background. It felt almost unreal. She placed her bag on a chair and took a moment to take it all in. She had cleaned many homes before, but this was on a different scale. There was a sense of elegance and care in every corner, from the polished floors to the perfectly arranged furniture. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she had done hard work before and she could handle this too. As she started to work, she noticed the man occasionally glancing her way. He didn't hover or interfere, but there was a gentle curiosity in his eyes. She felt a little self-conscious at first, wondering if she was doing everything perfectly, but he didn't rush her or criticize her work, and that made her relax. She focused on the tasks one by one, dusting surfaces, organizing items, and tidying up rooms. While cleaning, small things caught her attention. The way the sunlight streamed through the windows and hit the wooden floor, creating patterns she had never noticed before. The subtle scent of candles placed strategically around the house. A small handwritten note on a table that seemed to be a daily reminder for someone. These details made her pause, and she realized there was something comforting about this home, something gentle beneath the luxury. After a while, the man returned with a tray of coffee and snacks. "I thought you might like a break," he said, setting it down on the counter. She looked at him, surprised and grateful. "Thank you, that's very kind of you," she said. He smiled, leaning slightly against the counter. They started talking casually, and she found herself relaxing even more. He was easy to talk to, and their conversation flowed naturally. He asked about her day, her interests, and even shared little anecdotes about his own life. She found herself laughing, genuinely enjoying the moment. It was strange, she thought, how quickly she felt comfortable around him. Hours passed, and she continued working through the rooms, each task bringing a quiet satisfaction. She noticed small things about him during the day, How patient he was, how attentive to details, and how respectful he treated her as she worked. There was no sense of superiority, no awkward distance, just genuine kindness. She felt a little flutter in her chest every time he smiled or offered a small word of encouragement. By the time she was finishing up, the house looked immaculate, and she felt a sense of pride. She packed her supplies, ready to leave, when he approached her again. "Thank you for your help today," he said sincerely. "You did an amazing job, and I really appreciate it." She smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart. "It was no problem at all. I'm glad I could help." Before she left, they shared a few more moments of light conversation. She noticed the subtle way he listened, the small gestures of attentiveness that made her feel seen and valued. There was a quiet connection forming, one that she didn't quite understand yet. She left the house that evening with a mix of emotions, gratitude, curiosity, and a sense of unexpected happiness. As she drove home, she couldn't stop thinking about the day. The work had been hard, yes, but it had also been strangely fulfilling. More than that, there was something about the man she had met that lingered in her mind. There was a mystery about him, something she couldn't put her finger on, and she found herself hoping that this wasn't the last time she would see him. She pulled into her driveway, feeling the weight of the day but also a strange lightness in her chest. Life was still challenging, bills still needed to be paid, and her routines remained, but for the first time in a while, she felt a spark of something new, something that made her heart beat a little faster. She didn't know where it would lead, but she knew that today had changed something inside her, a small shift that might grow into something much bigger in the days to come. The next time she was asked to cover the shift, she felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. She wasn't sure why she felt this way. It was just another job, another day of cleaning. Yet her thoughts kept wandering to the man she had met the last time. She wondered what he was like when he wasn't smiling politely or watching her work. She reminded herself that she didn't know much about him at all, and perhaps it was better not to think too much. When she arrived at the house, he greeted her at the door again, his calm smile easing her nerves slightly. "Welcome back. I'm glad you could come today," he said. There was a small spark in his eyes, a warmth that made her heart beat a little faster. She returned his greeting with a smile, feeling a strange comfort in the familiarity. "Thank you for having me. I'm ready to get started." The house seemed even more alive this time. The sunlight poured through the windows and the soft hum of music filled the air, making the space feel warm and inviting. She went through the familiar routine of dusting, organizing, and cleaning, but this time she noticed the little details more. The way the curtains fell perfectly, the polished surfaces reflecting the light, the small personal touches that made the house feel lived in, rather than just luxurious. As she worked, he occasionally appeared in the room she was cleaning. He never interrupted or imposed, but sometimes he would offer a cup of tea or a small piece of fruit. She noticed his quiet attentiveness, the ease with which he moved through the house. He wasn't overbearing or boastful. He seemed content to simply exist alongside her as she did her work. They started talking more casually this time. He asked about her life, her routines, and she shared small stories about her family and friends. In return, he shared some light stories about himself. Nothing grandiose, just small moments that made him seem approachable and real. She was struck by how genuine he seemed. He listened carefully, asked questions that showed interest, and laughed softly at her stories without any sense of mockery or judgment. During a short break, they sat at the kitchen counter with mugs of tea. She noticed the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way he leaned slightly forward when listening. She realized she was drawn not just to his appearance but to his presence, his kindness, and his patience. She hadn't expected to feel this way, especially towards someone she didn't know well, and yet the connection felt undeniable. As the day went on, she found herself paying attention to his small gestures. How he would quietly pick up a stray book, how he seemed to notice little things without making a big deal of them. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it made her feel seen and respected. She worked harder, motivated not just by the job but by the feeling of being appreciated in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. At one point, he walked into the room where she was arranging flowers. He picked up a small vase and gently adjusted a stem. She looked at him surprised, and he laughed softly. "I hope you don't mind. I like things to feel just right," he said. There was no arrogance in his tone, just a quiet care that made her smile. They talked more during that moment, and she learned that he valued simplicity and small acts of thoughtfulness. He didn't flaunt wealth or status. Instead, he seemed to find joy in details that many would overlook. She found herself opening up, sharing thoughts and opinions she usually kept to herself. There was a strange comfort in the conversation, a sense of being understood without judgment. As the hours passed, she started to feel more relaxed around him. The initial nervousness had faded, replaced by a quiet curiosity. She wondered about his life outside the house, about the things he cared about and the moments that made him smile. She imagined him in different settings, and each thought brought a gentle warmth to her heart. When the cleaning was done, he offered to show her a few areas that needed extra attention next time. She followed him through the rooms, noticing his careful explanations and the patient way he guided her. She felt a sense of teamwork developing, as if they were partners in a small but meaningful way. Before she left, they shared a quiet moment in the garden. The sunlight was soft and the flowers swayed gently in the breeze. He thanked her sincerely again, and she realized how much his words meant to her. "You make this easier for everyone," he said, and she felt her cheeks warm. On her way home, she couldn't stop thinking about him. She replayed their conversations, the way he had smiled, the small gestures that had made her feel special. She wondered if he felt the same curiosity, the same interest. The thought made her heart race and filled her with a strange sense of hope. That night, she reflected on the day. She realized that something had shifted inside her. It wasn't just the work or the house. It was the connection, the feeling of being appreciated and understood. She knew she wanted to see him again, to learn more about the person behind the polite smile. She drifted to sleep with a soft smile on her face, feeling a spark of excitement for what the next shift might bring. The next few days were filled with anticipation. She found herself checking the calendar, counting the hours until she could return. She prepared for the next visit with a quiet enthusiasm, thinking about the conversations they had, the shared laughter, and the subtle moments of connection. She realized that life could bring unexpected joys in the most ordinary of circumstances. When she returned for her next shift, she was greeted with the same calm smile, and for a moment, the world outside the house seemed to fade away. They moved through the day with ease, talking, working, and sharing small moments that felt significant. She noticed that he was attentive not just to her work but to her comfort, offering water, adjusting the temperature, and making sure she had breaks. During one of the breaks, they sat outside in the garden. She noticed the way his eyes followed her movements, the quiet interest he showed in her thoughts. She realized that she was not just drawn to him but felt genuinely comfortable around him, as if she could be herself without fear of judgment. The conversation flowed easily, touching on dreams, fears, and small hopes for the future. She shared things she hadn't told many people, and he listened with genuine care. The connection grew subtly but unmistakably. There was a quiet energy between them, a gentle curiosity that neither could ignore. She found herself laughing more, feeling lighter, and thinking about him even when she was away from the house. It was unexpected, and yet it felt natural, like a quiet unfolding of something important. As the shift ended, he walked her to the door. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the garden. He paused, looking at her with a thoughtful expression. "I'm glad you're here," he said simply. Those words, simple as they were, made her heart swell. She nodded, feeling the same warmth and gratitude. "I'm glad too," she replied, and for a brief moment, the world seemed perfectly aligned. She left the house with a quiet happiness, her mind replaying the day and the small, meaningful moments they had shared. She realized that her feelings were growing, that the curiosity and interest she felt were turning into something deeper. She didn't know where it would lead, but she felt a gentle hope, a sense that life could surprise her in wonderful ways. Over the next few shifts, the pattern continued. Each visit brought small discoveries about each other, small gestures that made her feel appreciated, and moments of laughter that made the work feel lighter. She noticed that she looked forward to these visits more than anything else, that they had become a bright spot in her routine. The connection between them grew quietly but surely, a subtle thread of understanding and attraction that neither could deny. By the end of this period, she realized that she was no longer just covering a shift for a friend. She was invested in the moments they shared, in the conversations, the gestures, and the simple human connection that had formed between them. She didn't yet know the full story of who he was, but she felt a growing trust and admiration. Something important was beginning, something that could change her life in ways she had never imagined, and she was both nervous and excited to see where it might go. By the time she returned for her next shift, she realized that the initial nervousness she had felt had completely faded. In its place was a quiet comfort, a sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with the work itself. She parked her car at the edge of the driveway, took a deep breath and stepped out, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and calm. He greeted her at the door with the same gentle smile that had become familiar. "Good to see you again," he said. There was a warmth in his voice that made her chest feel lighter. She returned the greeting, feeling a little thrill at the simple exchange. The house seemed more welcoming than ever, almost alive in its quiet elegance. She moved through the rooms, beginning her routine, but this time she felt a greater awareness of the small moments. The way the sunlight hit the polished surfaces, the gentle rustle of leaves outside the windows, the faint scent of fresh flowers, it all felt more vivid, almost as if the house itself was encouraging her to slow down and notice. He appeared from time to time, offering small gestures of kindness, a cup of water, a soft word of encouragement, a quiet compliment about her work. She noticed how patient he was, how he didn't hurry or pressure her, and she felt a deep appreciation for his thoughtfulness. She had met many people in her life, but there was something different about him. He seemed to genuinely care about the small details, not just in the house but in the people around him. As the day went on, their conversations became more personal. They shared stories from their past, the small joys and struggles that shaped who they were. She told him about her family, her dreams, and the challenges she faced in her everyday life. In return, he spoke softly about his own experiences, though he kept the focus on simple, relatable moments rather than accomplishments or wealth. She was struck by how down-to-earth he seemed, despite the impression of grandeur the house conveyed. At one point, they found themselves in the kitchen together, preparing a small snack. He laughed quietly at something she said, and she realized that his laughter was gentle, unassuming, and genuine. There was a comfort in the sound, a warmth that made her feel safe and relaxed. She noticed herself stealing glances at him, noticing the little things, the way his fingers moved, the calm expression on his face, the quiet attentiveness he showed to her and the work around him. During a break, they sat in the garden, the sun casting a warm glow over the flowers and the lawn. She felt a sense of ease she hadn't experienced in a long time. They talked about small dreams, about simple pleasures in life, and about moments that had left lasting impressions. She found herself opening up more than she usually did, sharing thoughts and feelings that she kept private from most people. He listened without judgment, asking gentle questions that showed he cared. As the hours passed, she realized that she was thinking about him even when she wasn't at the house. She found herself recalling his words, his expressions, and the small gestures that had made her feel noticed and appreciated. She couldn't explain why she felt such a pull toward him, only that it was becoming stronger with each visit. The more time they spent together, the more she noticed the subtle ways he showed his care. He would adjust a chair so she could reach something more easily, offer her a towel if she looked tired, and occasionally pause just to ask if she needed a moment of rest. These small acts, quiet and unobtrusive, spoke volumes. She realized that he was thoughtful in a way that went beyond words, and it made her feel valued and respected. Their conversations began to touch on more personal topics. She shared moments from her childhood, the small dreams she had for the future, and the fears that sometimes kept her awake at night. He responded with empathy, sharing bits of his own experiences in a way that felt genuine and relatable. She found herself smiling and laughing more freely, feeling a bond forming that was quiet but undeniable. One afternoon, while arranging a shelf of books in the study, he watched her for a moment and then spoke softly. "You have a good eye for details," he said. "I notice the way you notice things others might overlook." She felt a warmth rise in her chest, a mix of pride and something deeper, something she didn't quite understand yet. It wasn't just the compliment, it was the way he had said it, with sincerity and care. She began to anticipate their small moments together, the shared laughter, the quiet conversations, the gentle attentiveness that made her feel seen. Each visit left her feeling lighter, happier, and more connected. She realized that her feelings were growing, evolving from curiosity to something more personal and profound. She didn't yet understand the depth of her emotions, but she knew they were real and meaningful. As the day drew to a close, they found themselves again in the garden, the golden light of the setting sun casting long shadows across the lawn. He spoke about simple joys in life, the taste of fresh fruit, the smell of flowers, the peace of quiet moments. She listened, captivated not just by his words but by the calm and gentle way he expressed himself. It was a side of life she rarely allowed herself to enjoy, and she felt grateful for it. Before she left, they shared a moment of quiet understanding. No words were needed. The connection between them spoke louder than any conversation could. She felt a sense of anticipation for the next visit, a quiet hope that their bond would continue to grow. She realized that life had a way of surprising her in the most unexpected ways, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. On the drive home, she reflected on the day. She thought about the small gestures, the shared moments, and the growing connection. She realized that she had never met anyone quite like him, someone who could make her feel both comfortable and curious at the same time. Her heart swelled with a mixture of excitement and a gentle longing, feelings that were new and unfamiliar but welcomed. Over the next few shifts, the pattern continued. Each visit brought new conversations, small acts of kindness and moments of laughter that deepened their connection. She noticed herself looking forward to these visits more than anything else in her routine. The house, once intimidating in its grandeur, now felt like a space where meaningful moments could happen, where human connection was valued over appearances. They began to share small, personal stories that revealed more of who they were. She talked about her ambitions, the challenges she faced, and the moments of joy she cherished. He shared his perspectives, the things he valued, and the small philosophies that guided his life. Through these exchanges, they discovered a shared sense of humor, a mutual respect, and an understanding that transcended social boundaries. By the end of this period, she realized that her feelings had grown beyond simple curiosity. She cared for him in a way that was both exciting and comforting. She wasn't sure if he felt the same, but the moments they shared hinted at a mutual bond, a quiet recognition of something important forming between them. She knew that the next shift could bring new surprises, new moments that would deepen the connection even further. There was an unspoken understanding now, a gentle curiosity that both of them nurtured. Life, she realized, had a way of bringing people together in unexpected ways, and she felt a growing anticipation for what the future might hold. The connection, subtle and quiet as it was, had become a part of her life in a way that she never anticipated, and she was eager to see how it would continue to unfold. The morning she was scheduled for her next shift, she woke up with a mix of excitement and unease. The days of meeting him had become a highlight in her otherwise routine life, yet today carried a subtle tension she couldn't quite explain. As she drove toward the house, her mind replayed their past conversations, their small laughs, the gentle moments that had created a bond she didn't fully understand yet. She tried to push the unease aside, focusing instead on the comforting rhythm of anticipation. When she arrived, he greeted her at the door with the usual warm smile. But there was something different in the way he looked at her, a hint of seriousness mixed with the kindness she had grown to love. "Good to see you again," he said softly. She smiled, noting the slight change, and stepped inside, feeling the familiar comfort of the house surround her. The day began like any other, with her tidying up, dusting, and organizing the rooms. Yet there was a subtle shift in the air, an unspoken tension she couldn't place. He moved about the house as usual, attentive, careful, and considerate. Yet there was a distant thought in his eyes, one that hinted at a concern he hadn't shared. Midway through the morning, as she was arranging a set of books in the study, a soft knock on the door interrupted her focus. An assistant entered, carrying a folder and a small electronic device. "Sir, the press office called," the assistant said. There was a respectful pause, and she noticed the man's expression change slightly. He took the folder, glanced at it, and then looked toward her with an apologetic smile. "I need to take this call," he said quietly, motioning for her to continue her work. Curiosity and a creeping sense of awareness nudged at her. Something about the way he handled the call, the subtle formality in his tone, and the sudden shift from the relaxed, calm man she knew, made her wonder if there was more to him than she realized. Yet she pushed the thought aside, focusing on her work, pretending not to notice. though her mind lingered on the questions forming in her head. After the call, he returned to her side, his expression thoughtful but softening as he spoke to her. "I'm sorry about that interruption. Everything is fine now," he said, attempting casual normalcy. Yet there was a slight tension in his posture, a quiet acknowledgement that something had changed. They continued their tasks together, moving through the house as a familiar rhythm of work and conversation unfolded. She noticed subtle differences in his behavior, the way he seemed more aware of outside interruptions, the way he occasionally glanced at messages on his phone with a quiet focus. The curiosity within her grew stronger. She realized she had only seen fragments of his life, and now she was beginning to understand that there were layers she hadn't yet discovered. During a short break, she stepped into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. He followed quietly and spoke softly. "I should probably be honest with you about something," he said. Her heart skipped a beat. The seriousness in his tone made her pause. "I feel it's time you know more about me," he continued. The air felt heavy with anticipation, and she listened carefully, feeling both nervous and intrigued. He explained that he held a position she hadn't imagined. His modest demeanor, the calm and simplicity she had appreciated, belied a significant responsibility he carried. She felt a swirl of surprise, disbelief, and a quiet awe. He was not just the thoughtful, gentle man she had grown to know. He was someone of considerable influence, someone whose life carried a weight she hadn't anticipated. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions. She had admired him for his kindness, his humility, the subtle attentiveness that had made her feel valued. But now, learning about his position, she felt a wave of doubt. Was her connection with him still the same? Would he see her differently now? Would their conversations, their laughter, the small moments of connection carry the same meaning? He noticed her pause, the faint hesitation in her expression, and he reached out gently. "I hope this doesn't change the way you feel about our time together," he said. His voice was steady, sincere, and filled with hope. She looked at him, the familiar kindness shining through the layers of responsibility he carried, and felt her doubts begin to soften. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the truth of her feelings. She realized that the admiration and warmth she felt were for the person he was, not the position he held. His humility, thoughtfulness, and gentle nature had drawn her in long before she knew anything about his life outside the house. And that realization gave her courage. "I don't think it changes anything," she said softly, meeting his gaze. "I like you for who you are, not for what you do." The relief in his eyes was palpable, a quiet gratitude that seemed to lift a weight from the air. For the first time, there was a sense of honest understanding between them, a foundation of trust that strengthened the bond they had nurtured. The rest of the day passed with a new awareness between them. Their conversations carried a deeper honesty, a quiet acknowledgement of the vulnerability they shared. She noticed how his attention remained thoughtful but now tinged with a subtle openness, a willingness to share more, to allow her to see beyond the surface. She in turn felt freer to express herself, to move with a natural ease that had been tempered by curiosity and restraint before. As the afternoon sun softened, they found themselves once more in the garden. He gestured toward a bench under a tree, and they sat together in companionable silence. The air was filled with the gentle sounds of nature, and the warmth of the sun seemed to mirror the growing connection between them. She realized that the revelation had not diminished their bond, it had deepened it, adding layers of understanding and honesty that had been absent before. She thought about the path that had led her here, from a simple favor to cover a shift, to these quiet moments of genuine connection. Life had a way of surprising her, showing that the most meaningful relationships often began in unexpected ways. She felt a sense of gratitude not just for the bond she was forming, but for the courage it gave her to embrace honesty, vulnerability, and trust. They continued to talk quietly, sharing thoughts and reflections, discovering new dimensions of each other. She noticed how his words carried weight and care, how he listened with patience, and how he valued her perspective. The realization that he trusted her enough to reveal his identity created a deep sense of closeness. She felt a quiet pride, not in his position, but in the trust and openness he showed her. By the time the shift ended, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in warm tones of orange and pink. They walked to the door together, a shared understanding passing between them. There was no need for grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Everything had shifted naturally, quietly, and profoundly. She felt a sense of calm and anticipation, knowing that their connection had entered a new phase, one built on honesty, respect, and mutual appreciation. As she drove home that evening, her thoughts were a mixture of reflection and quiet excitement. The revelation of his identity had brought a wave of emotions, but she recognized that the essence of her feelings remained unchanged. She cared for him not because of his position, but because of the genuine kindness, humility, and warmth he had shown her from the beginning. That night, she lay awake for a while, thinking about the future and the possibilities that had opened up. The bond between them had deepened, and she felt a quiet hope that it would continue to grow, nourished by honesty and mutual respect. She realized that the extraordinary could arise from the ordinary, that simple acts of kindness and shared moments could lead to profound connections. The revelation had added complexity to their relationship, yes, but it had also strengthened it. She knew that moving forward their bond would be based not on appearances or assumptions, but on genuine understanding and shared values. She felt a sense of anticipation for the next shift, knowing that each meeting would continue to reveal layers of connection, trust, and perhaps even love. Life, she understood now, had a way of leading people to moments they could never predict. A simple favor, a day spent cleaning a house, had brought her to this point, a place of quiet trust, genuine connection, and unexpected emotion. She closed her eyes with a smile, feeling gratitude for the journey and excitement for what was yet to come, ready to embrace the next chapter of this evolving story. The next shift began with the familiar rhythm of chores, laughter, and quiet conversation. But now it carried a sense of anticipation that neither of them could deny. She walked through the house with ease, feeling comfortable not just in the space but in the presence of the man who had gradually become such a significant part of her days. His calm smile greeted her at the door, and for a moment the world outside the house seemed to fade away. They started working through the rooms, exchanging light-hearted comments and gentle jokes. She noticed how naturally their movements and conversations had synced over time, as if they were partners in a rhythm that had nothing to do with cleaning and everything to do with understanding each other. Each gesture, each small conversation, added layers to the bond that had been quietly growing since the first day. As the morning progressed, they shared stories that were more personal than before. She spoke about her hopes, dreams, and the small ambitions she had nurtured for herself. He listened intently, occasionally offering encouragement and thoughtful insights. She found herself opening up more than she had with anyone in a long time. There was a comfort in the way he listened, the way he responded, and the genuine care that shone through every word. He, in turn, shared glimpses of his life beyond the walls of the house. She learned about the responsibilities he carried, the people he cared for, and the quiet moments of joy and reflection he cherished. Yet, despite the magnitude of his position, he spoke with humility and sincerity, showing the same kindness and attentiveness she had noticed from the beginning. She realized that it was not his status but his character that drew her in, that made her heart respond in ways she hadn't expected. During a break, they stepped into the garden together, the sun casting warm, gentle light over the flowers and the lawn. The air was filled with a quiet energy, a mix of contentment, curiosity, and something more that neither had fully named yet. They sat on a bench under a large tree, sharing small laughs and comfortable silences. It was in these quiet moments that she felt the depth of her feelings most clearly. He reached out and offered her a small flower from the garden, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. She accepted it with a smile, feeling a warmth in her chest that went beyond the action itself. It was thoughtful, gentle, and personal, a reflection of the connection that had been nurtured over their time together. She realized that it was in these small acts, the gestures of care and attention, that the true strength of their bond lay. As the day continued, she found herself noticing subtle details about him that she had not fully appreciated before. The way he focused when he spoke, the quiet attentiveness in his eyes, the patience he showed in every interaction. It all added up to a sense of safety, respect, and admiration. She felt inspired by his character, moved by his humility, and drawn closer to him in ways she had not anticipated. Their conversations gradually shifted toward the future. She shared her hopes for stability, happiness, and simple joys, while he spoke about his desire for meaningful connections and moments of genuine companionship. They laughed, discussed dreams, and considered possibilities, each exchange building trust and understanding. She felt a growing certainty that their bond was something rare and valuable, something worth nurturing carefully. As the afternoon sun began to dip, casting golden light across the house and garden, he suggested they take a short walk outside. They strolled along the driveway, the soft rustle of leaves and distant sounds of the neighborhood providing a gentle backdrop. It was during this walk that she sensed a subtle shift in the energy between them, a quiet acknowledgement that their connection had grown into something deeper. He stopped for a moment and looked at her, his expression both serious and gentle. "I've enjoyed every moment we've shared," he said softly, "not because of anything outside, but because of you. Because of who you are." Her heart fluttered at his words. There was sincerity, warmth, and a quiet vulnerability in his tone that made her feel seen and valued in a way that went beyond any previous experience. She felt a lump in her throat, emotions swirling in a mixture of excitement, relief, and growing affection. "I feel the same way," she replied softly, her voice steady despite the emotions inside. "It's not about anything else, it's about the time we spend together and the way we understand each other." He smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile that seemed to melt away any lingering doubts. From that moment, their interactions carried a new dimension. The quiet glances, the small gestures, the shared laughter, and meaningful silences all took on a subtle intensity. They moved with a natural ease, the unspoken understanding between them growing stronger with each shared experience. There was no rush, no grand declarations, just a patient, mutual recognition of feelings that had been building quietly over time. Over the next few shifts, this new closeness became even more evident. Each visit was marked by small acts of kindness, thoughtful gestures, and moments of genuine connection. She noticed how he remembered details from previous conversations, how he offered support and encouragement, and how he made her feel appreciated and respected. In return, she responded with warmth, openness, and a growing sense of trust that allowed their relationship to deepen naturally. They began to explore the idea of spending time together outside the context of the house, sharing small outings and walks, continuing the conversations that had started in the quiet spaces of cleaning and tidying. Each experience strengthened their connection, revealing compatibility, shared values, and mutual respect. She realized that the bond they shared was not dependent on circumstances or status. It was rooted in genuine understanding and affection. During one quiet evening in the garden, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, he reached for her hand, a simple, natural gesture that spoke volumes. She felt a warmth spread through her, a reassurance that their connection had grown into something both tender and profound. They sat together in silence for a while, enjoying the quiet presence of each other, the comfort and trust that had developed over time. She thought about how far they had come, from a simple favor, to shared shifts, to the quiet unfolding of emotions and connection. The extraordinary had emerged from the ordinary, showing her that life could bring unexpected joys in the most unassuming ways. She felt a deep gratitude for the bond they had nurtured, for the moments of laughter, care, and understanding that had become an essential part of her life. As the days passed, their relationship continued to blossom naturally. They shared experiences, discovered common interests, and offered support in subtle, meaningful ways. She realized that she had found someone who valued her for her character, her thoughts, and her presence, and that realization filled her with joy and reassurance. Their connection had evolved into something enduring, built on trust, kindness, and genuine affection. Eventually, they began to openly acknowledge the feelings that had grown quietly but steadily. Simple words, small gestures, and thoughtful acts became expressions of care and affection. There was no rush, no need for dramatic proclamations, just a mutual understanding that what they shared was real, meaningful, and worth cherishing. She realized that life's twists and turns had led her to a place she had never imagined. A simple act of helping a friend, a few hours of work in a house that was not her own, had brought her to someone who respected, understood, and cared for her deeply. It was a story of unexpected connection, of patience, and of the quiet unfolding of love in its most genuine form. On one particular evening, as they walked through the garden under a sky full of stars, he stopped and looked at her. "I want you to know," he said softly, "that you've become an important part of my life, not because of where I am, but because of who you are, and I hope we can continue to build something together." step by step. She smiled, feeling a rush of emotion, her heart swelling with a mixture of happiness, relief, and love. "I want that too," she replied, her voice steady yet filled with warmth. "I'm glad we found each other even in the most unexpected way." He took her hand gently, a simple gesture that felt like a promise, a beginning, and a reaffirmation all at once. From that day forward, their relationship moved forward with care, mutual respect, and a deepening affection. They continued to share moments, both ordinary and special, always mindful of the foundation they had built: trust, understanding, and genuine appreciation for each other. She felt grateful for the journey, for the unexpected turns that had led to this connection, and for the quiet unfolding of a love that was steady, sincere, and real. The story of a simple favor, a few shifts in a house that was not her own, had turned into something extraordinary. She had discovered the joy of genuine connection, the warmth of mutual respect, and the excitement of unexpected love. Life had a way of surprising her, and she welcomed each new moment, knowing that the bond they shared was built to last, nurtured by patience, care, and the quiet, steady growth of something truly special.